Welcome to the Valve Bounce. We are about to hit our limiters over the Oscar Piastri penalty. And Damo, welcome. You are in a remote location in where?
I am. I'm on the Sunshine Coast, so a bit of a holiday. So excuse any audio or differences in that sense. Any of the internet problems is your fault, Steve. Your connection is buzzing out. I'm going okay. But my goodness, what a race. Well, what a penalty. Let's talk about the situation. Let's get that one done and dusted out of the way because, wow, it is setting the internet alight at the moment. And we've got people on the Lando side, people on the Oscar side, people who are trying to review it with a bit of data and integrity that have more knowledge, like, of course, us, naturally. But we've got lots of things to talk about with the British Grand Prix. But let me kick it off to you, throw it over to you. And Oscar Piastri received a 10-second penalty for a break-in procedure, I guess was the official way it sort of panned out. Break-in procedure, reckless driving, whatever it ended up being. I can't remember the wording, but he received that penalty for the kind of brake check that they talked about during the safety car restart period. So that's what happened. What are your thoughts, Steve? I'll let you go first.
Well, thank you, Damien, for allowing me the opportunity to present to our audience why they're all wrong. No. Look, the penalty was too harsh. Do I like what I saw? Definitely not. But here is the thing. So in Spain, let's go back to Spain, there was a restart. And Oscar did exactly the same thing there where he hit the anchors, came to not a halt, but really slow. So didn't get a penalty. Fair enough. Play on.
That was the first time that happened. Yep. No problems.
Go fast forward to the Canadian Grand Prix. George Russell hits the brakes.
Yep.
You know, we have Verstappen fly by. No penalty. Okay.
Second time. Yep.
Lap 17 of the British Grand Prix. Safety car. Oscar hits the brakes. No penalty.
Third time.
Then we have time. We have this interesting moment where Oscar hits the brakes. Verstappen goes past and then makes a little bit of cry on the radio. And then he loses it out of I've forgotten the name of the corner, Damo. You might be able to fix that up in post. Oh, wait, I do post. No. He loses it coming out of the second, third, fourth last corner. And all of a sudden, this is a problem and Oscar gets a penalty. And it's just coincidence that the guy that inherited second at that particular point in time, and I'm not claiming any British bias here, but he may or may not have won the race, Lando Norris, was in second. And I think the Brits saw a great way to remove Oscar from absolutely annihilating him in front of his home crowd. And here we are. I don't agree with it. 10 seconds is too harsh. 5 would have been sufficient in this case. I will make the point that for me personally, every single one of those, whether it be Oscar or whether it was George or any of the other, I don't like them. I actually don't want them to be there, but I'll touch on that later on in one of my key points. But yeah, 100%, mate. That's at minimum or at maximum a 5-second penalty, and at minimum not a penalty at all. What do you say, Damo?
Mate, in total alignment there, I guess, from my point of view, I think the precedent is the big thing, right? We've seen it happen multiple times. We see that it is not penalised in any way, shape or form. I guess my take on it, I'm not really, there's no clear understanding why Oscar kind of did it so forcefully. I do think it was really unnecessary and it was a bad thing. I think there is a penalty there, especially in the conditions, to be braking so hard. It's just not right for the broader good of the sport and for the other drivers following. But how on earth can it be 10 seconds when you compare other 10-second penalties that are happening out there? You know, Verstappen driving to the side of a car, and that's 10 seconds, and yet this where nothing happens anywhere other than a bit of like the field gets compacted. Verstappen didn't really have to avoid, but there was some avoidance that had to happen further back. And so that, that's why it does deserve the penalty. But FIA, again, showing that they can't be consistent. They've got all sorts of understanding of it's happened before, we've let it go. Drivers think, okay, well, I'm good to do this, right? I'm going to maximize my braking to generate as much heat as possible. And it was just a bad call from Oscar because it was too excessive. And he does deserve some penalty. But I agree, 5 seconds is all it needed to be. And in that way, you're still penalising the driver. You're giving them opportunity and not ruining one's race. And my goodness, even afterwards, even though Max, who's always, every driver on the radio straight away, loves to sort of, oh, mate, he's brake testing, he's gone hard, he's trying to make sure he's not in trouble. But after the race, Max was the one that actually called it out and said, look, hey, we see other things where no penalties or 10 seconds, for things that are more severe. So it doesn't make sense. And it's just, it's hard to not think it's British bias. It's hard to not feel like they're trying to keep either the championship alive or favour someone. When stuff like this happens, it's just the punters are always going to be up in arms about it.
Yeah, it's immediate, like absolutely immediate where that happens. And it's always one versus the other. I've seen some pretty wild, excessive takes on this the other way, which I'm like, I don't know how you get to that point. Like you actually have to fabricate the story to make it turn out that way. As we've said, we agree that it shouldn't be happening, and we agree that there should be a level of a penalty applied in these situations. But the fact of the matter is that if you've gone a half a season and not penalized it, you can't just suddenly penalize it because it fits the narrative that you want. And that's what it feels like to a lot of people, not just Aussies. There's been a few externals, the Red Flags podcast, who are an American-based podcast. They are, avid, one is a Norris supporter and one is an Oscar supporter, but they both agreed that it was excessive to get a 10-second penalty.
Interesting.
I've heard David Coulthard sort of say, it's bad, it looks bad, but I don't think it was really deserving. And then on the other foot, Ralph Schumacher coming out saying that he should have been thrown the book. And you're just like, I don't know where you got that from, Ralph, other than your butt hurt. And it gets a little bit excessive both ways sometimes. But in this case, I think they're dragging a kid who realistically, let's be honest here, Oscar hasn't really made many mistakes, and he makes one, and then you suddenly trying to brand him like dirty. Like Ralph actually used the term that it was dirty. And I'm like, it's not dirty, mate. It's literally hitting the brakes to get as much heat into your tires as fast as you possibly can. The unfortunate part to this was a late safety car call off on the actual lights, turning them off. And it was a whole concoction of things that came to fruition. Yeah. So you just, man, it's a lot. And there's a lot of people that obviously haven't been on track behind a safety car. I've been on a few now. Very much everyone is up, down, up, down. You have to keep your wits about you. So, it's also, the onus is on the people behind. And like watching Lando like fly up like an idiot behind Max, he had miles of room to be braking harder and staying out of the way. And he made it look even worse than what it actually was. And it caused more problem for behind, I reckon. But that's just my take, Damien. Well,
that's it.
As I whack away. What's a podcast without me smacking something or kicking something?
Yeah.
Or here's a pod mic hit. There we go. We'll get that out the way.
There we go. Nice. Yeah, totally agree. I think everyone's giving their opinion, so we welcome yours.
Yes.
But yeah, we've done a lot of the investigation. I just can't see why that penalty is so severe. But we are going to move on from that now. Let's park that. We've got the nasty stuff out the way. Although you do want to touch on safety car stuff in the future with our talking points.
That's on our 6 talking points.
I know, but let's just have a little rundown of what sort of happened with our kind of predictions and the results. Because we
missed that last week.
We did miss it, but what an absolute classic! We haven't changed it because we're so intelligent, we're so smart that we never get any of them, barely any right. I think for the round we got one, and that was yours.
That was mine. It was mine. Piastri +1 for second.
Yeah,
and look, to be honest, can I say that my pick, which of winning, was Lewis Hamilton, which was a wild take. It was more of a fairy tale. That actually almost looks like it might happen early on.
It might happen, yeah.
And if we didn't have the colossal rain and everything else that made this race such an event to watch, it may have just come off, Damien. It may have
just come off. It was pretty close. Well, if we didn't have the big penalty, I would have been sweet with Piastri first and Norris in second. I did have Russell in third. But in any case, you had Hamilton for pole. I had Russell. I had Piastri winner, Norris second, and Russell in third. And you obviously had Hamilton as the winner. Piastri, good, well done. Got your point.
Thank you.
And then Norris in third. Sorry. But I did want to just quickly say that with the results, with Norris obviously winning, Piastri second, we then, as I put in the little scroll bar that's coming across, Nico Hulkenberg!
Nico!
Stunner, what an absolute amazing 239 Grand Prix starts, 15 years, finally and deservedly drove a fantastic race, again from the rear of the grid to move all the way forward to third place. Well done, Nico. Well done.
Absolutely love to see it. And we're kicking off your first key talking points, I think, Damo, with that one.
We are, because it was a good segue that it is really great. I'd like to ask a few questions, though, to get your thoughts after my talking point. It was obviously a massive delight. It was joy all around the paddock, with especially like people like Max, even like giving him a flight home, sharing the celebration. There was radio calls, Gasly, everyone else. I'd just like to say there's 2 points that I'd like to hear from you on. One is all that time, all that effort. And no, I love Lego, no disrespect, but for that one to be the one that you get a Lego trophy, it breaks my heart a little bit. And what was your take on the McLaren drivers on the podium? Like, it's not their job to, just to celebrate Nico, but
no,
I couldn't have just at least shown a bit of love to him. I was really disappointed in that, mate.
We've spoken about podium celebrations before briefly, and I think it was more around supercars, because I think it was the Perth event that we saw it when it's somebody's first podium, and that there's so much excitement for that individual, and it's great to see. Like in that case, we had 3 almost new podium getters type thing, so they were all excited. And then you look at something like the weekend where we're at the British Grand Prix. Nico's finally, as you said, after 239 races, gotten that elusive podium finish. And I think there's an obligation now, no matter, and I get why Piastri was fuming. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no reason for Lando to not be absolutely showering Nico.
Yeah.
And to a greater extent, same with Oscar. You got to pull up the bottom lip on these occasions and just like you got to celebrate. You know how hard it is to get an F1 podium, regardless of whether you've got the right car. Like it is incredibly difficult to get a podium in this sport. You guys should be fucking pumped to be there, and it shouldn't come across to any punter in the stand or anywhere else that you have sour grapes. You should be just happy, pumping along, celebrating everything, and taking in the moment, because you only get a few. Like, why? You've only got a few. Just enjoy them. You know, you're not going to have 1,000, 2,000 of these. If you are truly great, you might get 30 to 50 of them. Right?
Yeah.
If it's only the exceptionals like Max and Lewis who will go on to get the 70s and the 100s and so forth. Like, just be better. Enjoy it. Love it.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yes.
I agree totally. Yeah. And I totally agree. Like, it's one of those things that being just that moment of gratefulness and celebration for Nico. So I did feel for him. But in the end, he's got the trophy. His daughter loves Lego, so she's playing with it. Well done, Nico. And I guess that's my first talking point.
Very good. And I'll end it with the fact that the joke that Oscar made in the press conference where he turned around to Nico and he's like, all these races, and they give you a Lego trophy. And a few people went in on Oscar for that, but I actually like the fact that he made light of it, because I think it was his effort to. I think he probably realized after the fact that he'd been a bit of a Debbie Downer and he was trying to, sort of lighten the mood with it. But, and Nico, responded with, my daughter loves Lego. So I think that was a good little piece, thankfully. But and just to finally cut that off, Max, straight after that race, straight to Nico, big hug. I thought that was great to see. Right.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Right.
So, Steve, what is your first talking point?
Well, Damo, my first key talking point from the British Grand Prix is around safety cars and the need for race control to have more control over the situation. I'm going to use supercars, weirdly, as an example or a case study, whereby once the lights go out on the safety car, cars no longer weave, change their pace. They have to stay in line, and they can only go once the leader goes. And I think it's time that in this case that this happens in Formula One. And the way to make sure that this happens is that those safety car lights have to go out earlier. They must go out by a certain point of the lap, whether that's maybe 2/3 maximum of the lap. And then once that happens, everyone knows, and they're not going to do anything stupid for that last third, right? And the gap can be built, and it's all okay. And I think it's time that this happens. We simply can't have what unfolded on the weekend happen again. I'm over it. I'm done. I don't want to see anyone gain penalties from this sort of stuff, because at the end of the day, if you at current are saying that the lead driver has control of the field once the safety car switches off their lights and they bugger off, well, I'm sorry, whatever unfolds is actually on you, because you can't give full control. You have to have some limitations, and they don't have enough right now. And I'm big against having a heap of regulations around shit, but in this case, there has to be a line in the sand that's very clear, and it's also got to be race control calling the shots at the right time. So if the safety car, for instance, goes beyond 2/3 of a lap, stiff shit, it's going another lap.
Couldn't agree more. I think that having a dedicated point where it's a yes, we can call it, no, we can't, is more important than probably anything else, because the ambiguity leaves drivers in all sorts of kind of confusion, because that particular one where Oscar penalised was obviously really late. It was much later than the round before. And so it's crucial for the drivers to be able to understand, okay, we're at this point in the racetrack, and so we know there has to be another lap. Or the alternative is, if you're not going to stick to a particular point in the lap, there has to be comms that goes out with everyone prepared. Okay, before turn 9, before turn 12, whatever it is, okay, lights will go off. And then that way everybody knows there's no more of that, funny compression because people at the back can't see or know what's going on. They need a hard set moment. I couldn't agree more, because the safety car stuff is just getting a little funky out there. It's not really much fun for anyone.
No, and we've got a great championship on our hands, and the last thing we need is it to be ruined by fake penalties. And I will say it's fake, because I think they reached for this one. So look, anyway, I'll stop there. I think I've said enough on the topic. I think people understand where I'm coming from. Hopefully you guys at home, if you don't agree with me, I actually do want to hear what you have to say. So go in the comments, because I'm interested, and don't come in with their silly stuff, but actually constructive on why you think this wouldn't be a better thing to do. So happy to talk about it. Love it. But so moving on to your second talking point, Damo, what do we got?
It is. Well, I just thought it's just getting a little bit beyond the joke, and just that second Red Bull seat is just absolutely doomed at the moment. So Yuki just had a terrible GP, despite managing to actually wrangle a reasonable qualification out of it. Got into the 11th position. Obviously not as high as Max, but still pretty good from where he's come from. But then the race was just an absolute mess for him. And I just wonder, with no more upgrades or very little upgrades coming for the 2025 season, the focus has moved, onto 2026. What hope has that car got to do anything? So what's Yuki going to do for the rest of the season? I just feel like it's just the worst sorry state of affair that you could ever hope for. And you just really hope that, whatever happens with people being shuffled around in that second seat, that, no one really wants that seat, I don't think, at the moment.
No, I think you're right. Look, Yuki knew going into this that if it didn't work out, it's career suicide. So many people pointed that out. I'm sure it was said to him numerous occasions. I'm sure at some point he probably thought, if this doesn't go well, I'm in trouble. He probably backed himself in to be better than Lawson. He probably thought he was going to be better than Perez. I think now we're definitely at the stage where the team has to take some accountability and say, listen, we understand we've given you a shit car. It's not working. We can't do anything about it now. So you're just going to have to strap in. And, at the end of the year or at the start of next year, hopefully we deliver you something better. And the only way I see this working in Yuki's favor overall is if he stays where he is, the team are good to him and allow him to stay, and that they give him a car next year that is somewhat better and more drivable. And then he can redeem himself by getting further up the grid. It's ridiculous that we have a car on the grid that is like this. Not even Max likes it. Can we just make that point? Like, the amount of times he might be able to drive it, but he does not like it. And that's saying something. So I think, I'm with you. I feel for Yuki now. I mean, I felt for Lawson. I feel for Yuki. I still don't feel for Perez, but sorry. But that second season.
To close this one out, Nico has scored more points than Red Bull in those last few races. So, it's showing you what a tough time it's been. So, that's the end of my second talking point.
Very
Steve,
good.
what's yours?
Yes. Wow. This might get me in trouble. My second key talking point, Davo, wasn't even about the race at all. It's it started before the race, but it impacted the driver in question during the race and costed him a very good result in front of his home crowd. So we're talking about, of course, Ollie Behrman, who managed to try and outdrive himself under red flag conditions coming into the pit lane, lost control of his car, hit the fence under red flag situation, and cost himself a 10-place grid penalty as a result. Then went on into qualifying to actually make Q3 and 8th, Damien. 8th on the grid, which is exceptional.
Yeah.
Exceptional driving by Ollie Behrman to have to start 18th in the race and then just be able to climb back to 11th after everything that happened and just miss points. That is catastrophic. You had the pace to be in the top 10, to secure points for your team, and you threw it away by being an utter twit under red flag conditions. It is the biggest waste of talent seeing that occur. And to Ollie and to any rookies coming into this series or any other series, or if you're just starting out racing, if it is a freaking red flag, it is a red flag. You cannot prove a point. You can't gain a lap. You can't do anything. So don't. Just bring it home. Into the pit lane, into the garage, and stop the fucking car.
Yeah, totally agree. Initially when I heard it, I was just like, I didn't hear about I didn't see the note about the red flag. I saw the penalty. I was like, that's bullshit. Like, that seems really excessive. Then I saw the vision. I saw it was red flag, and I thought, like, even whatever it was, like practicing a hot pit entry during a red flag. It's just one of those mistakes, and you just hope that he's going to learn his lesson from this one. He'll never ever do it again, and hopefully others learn not to do it because it was just a way. It just had so much car pace too. It could have been what could have been for him at his home Grand Prix and for Haas, but that was it.
You take into Hulk getting up to third from the back of the grid, man, and you think about Ollie's pace, and you just think, "Jeez, that could have been, mate. You could have been. It might not have been Hulk's. It might have been yours. You just never know." And anyway. On to your third key talking point, Damien.
Yeah, and it is another one that I've done a little bit of a what the is going on. Mercedes AMG, what is happening with them? Antonelli, another car. I mean, this boy is just copying them all. He's had I think one mistake, and the rest have been his car that's failed him. And then the strategy they rolled for George, they couldn't have possibly made any more wrong decisions at the right times. Like, they were just making them left, right, and center. The dive in the pits early, they just did everything wrong, and they really the wheels have fallen off because George was pumping him out there. He was getting some results. They were sort of pushing themselves as a possible contender at the right times at the right tracks. They just threw away this weekend. And at what point are they going to fix some of these gremlins that are happening? And then the strategy. They've just got to get back to what they're good at with the strategy.
Yeah, I agree. That my last talking point goes along a similar line. But the call straight away to come in to the pit lane and swap to slicks when it was clearly very wet at the back end of the track was just daft. Just daft. You just don't, especially from what was George, fourth on the grid. You just don't make that type of decision. Sure, the guys at the back who haven't qualified well or need to take a chance, absolutely. They can go and take those risks because why? They don't have anything to lose. When you're fourth, you have everything to lose by doing that. And yeah, it's silly. And you're right. Antonelli seems to have the run over the black cat, so to speak. He has got the bad run of issues with that car. But this is Formula One. I remember back to the Webber days and the Ricciardo days and the Red Bulls when the car would seemingly just it'll be the Aussie car that breaks down, and the other guy, he's fine. Don't worry about Vettel. That car will run for days. Yeah. So totally. Yep. Definitely funny how that happens in this sport.
Yeah, well, they're going to need to lift their socks if they're going to stay competitive and try and snag the best driver in the field. So good luck to them. All right, what is your third and the final key talking point, Steve?
Right, my final key talking point goes to the boys in red, and particularly around Charles Leclerc. So Ferrari took a punt like Mercedes, which I have actually later found out after I wrote this point that it was Charles' decision to come in and put those tires on. Nice. So that is squarely on him. He finally started to make inroads and then proceeded to make 2 costly errors and lost positions. He got back on track, sort of thing, trying to get back to the field, and it just never eventuated. He finished 14th. It was horrid. It was, I think I heard Matt Gallagher say that, this is either genius or he's getting lapped when he came in for those things, and he very almost nearly got lapped. So
nearly got that. Yeah.
It's pretty hard to watch Leclerc, and it seems to be these changeable conditions in particular that catch him and his engineer out. And I don't know why. I think they try and reinvent the wheel rather than, like, in these cases, sometimes it's just better to follow the leader. I mean, when you're that 4th, 5th, 6th, like, you're not going to gain a whole lot by jumping. Like, even if it does come off, it's still, it was going to be hard on the weekend. Those McLarens were impressively fast again. So there's no need to go out and try and win the race by doing a funky strategy. Not that far up the order anyway. So yes, Ferrari, like Mercedes, they need to actually pull up their socks and start making better calls and probably safer calls, right? Take the call that is not necessarily genius, but it's the responsible call, and just get, what you can get from the weekend, because both teams are in a battle with each other. The one that makes the least amount of errors in strategy, it feels like, are the ones that will finish ahead of them in the constructors. So one of them needs to pick it up. We'll see which one. But that is my final key talking point from the British Grand Prix. Of course, there was tons of other things that we could talk about in this race because it was just manic and chaos. But they were the 6 interesting key topics that 3 of the ones I wanted to cover, and 3 from yourself, Dave.
Yeah, it was. There were so many. I mean, that almost fairy tale Hamilton. Just doesn't matter what car he's in. Something about him and Silverstone gel so well, and even with all the poor strategy from Ferrari everywhere, still managed to do the right thing. So there was some great things that were happening, and lots of really good talking points, and a few questionable and not so good ones. But in any case, that is the wrap and the review of the British GP for us. And I think from here, we'll get ourselves organised. We've got there's supercars videos coming up, and obviously the next round for F1s in a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks at Spa. Yes. That'll be good. That'll be good. And you've got a holiday to finish, and I've got some things to tidy up myself. And I'm looking forward to it. The Townsville preview, sorry, not review. I keep mixing those up, and I do not know why. It will be coming out this week as well. So once we quit from this one, we'll probably be recording that immediately. So please stay tuned for that. If you're into your supercars, I will likely touch on the NASCAR stuff there because we had a ball tear up last weekend. So thank you for tuning in. At the Valve Bounce on all your social media outlets. Please like, subscribe, and push that notifications button. And we will see you in the next one.
We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.